A mai téma ezek közül az volt, hogy a hirdetői igények, amelyek között vannak legitim igények, vannak illegitim igények a hagyományos újságírói értékek szempontjából, azok hogyan befolyásolják a sajtót, az új formátumok, olyan új formátumok jönnek létre, mint például a branded content, márkázott tartalom, vagy általában a hirdetés és a tartalom közötti határ elmosódás, és hogy ezekre milyen etikus válaszokat lehet adni, úgy, hogy egyébként közben az újságíróknak nyilvánvalóan létkérdés tisztában lenni azzal, hogy egy üzleti környezetben is dolgoznak, miközben társadalmi küldetésük is van. És erről az egyensúlyról, erről a kettő közötti vékony mesdjéről, egyre vékonyabb mesdjéről beszéltünk, illetve arról, hogy a szabályozás egyébként milyen válaszokat tud erre adni, hogy az újságírás egy bonyolult környezetben dolgozik, amelyben vannak érdekei a hirdetőknek, vannak érdekei a tulajdonosoknak, vannak érdekei a köznek, vannak érdekei maguknak, az újságíróknak is, mint munkavállalóknak, vannak érdekei az államnak. Ezek az érdekek nagyon nehezen, nagyon bonyolultan hangolhatóak össze, de azon vagyunk, hogy ezzel a sok beszélgetéssel valahogy ezt össze tudjuk hangolni.
Továbbra is tartom azt az álláspontomat, hogy nincs olyan, hogy PR cikk. Az a reklámcikk. Lehet, hogy cikk formátum, azzal semmi baj nincsen. Csak nagyon fontos, hogy a fogyasztó számára legyen egyértelmű, hogy reklámról beszélünk, vagy szerkesztőségi tartalomról. Részben a fogyasztó már akkor is azt gondolja, hogy reklám van, hogyha nem is fizettek azért. Ami nem jó, mert az azt jelenti, hogy már nem feltétlenül hisz adott esetben az újságírónak, mert nem hiszi el, hogy ez az ő tudása, hanem azt gondolja, hogy azért van, mert lefizették. Ez egy csúnya gondolat, nem szép, és szerintem a jövő szempontjából mindenképpen veszélyes.
I work for Bildblog.de, which is a media watch blog, and we write about the mistakes that the German media does. Sometimes we write about newspapers that ran articles that look pretty much like advertising, and where we think, well, if they're not paid, they're stupid, because I would have asked for money if I write an article like that. It's tough to say where they actually got paid. I don't know if they ever actually get paid, but there are some articles where the German Press Council says that this is inappropriate to present a product or a company like this.
Well, I think people and also media people got used to mix it up and to mess it up also, and that's why I tried to make a clear statement that from an ethical point of view it's very important to have this separation, and as I have said, it's just the core of journalism to separate between the two things, because otherwise you just get a PR leaflet, and that's not journalism. But the consequences, the sanctions are not very strict. So if you do not follow the rule, in theory you could get a fine by public law, but normally this is not executed. So it's relatively soft. But the Press Council as an ethical institution is very strict about it, and actually we have had two cases about that problem. One was about the Kronenzeitung, which is the biggest newspaper in Austria, and they have had a cooperation with a regional government of southern Austria, of Styria, and they made a series about the politics, about the regional politics, and the design was like a normal article. Well, they stated that there was some cooperation with the regional government, but they didn't say that it was funded by it. And we said that was not good enough, and that's why the result was that it was an infringement of our code of ethics. And it was quite a good case, because there was a statement by the government that they funded this series of articles with 150,000 euros. So we really had the proof that there was some money flowing, because normally the problem is you cannot really know about the the money which is flowing. But in this case, it was relatively easy because there was this.
Great Britain was always set as an example for Central and Eastern Europe. So 20 years after the transition, a journalism student asking, what is ethical journalism, or what do you think is good journalism?
I think it's a very good question. I have always understood what ethical journalism is, and I understand it now. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at the media today and the way journalism operates today, that's a perfectly valid question, because we're getting falling standards. We've got severe pressure on journalists, both from political sources and from corporate sources and so on. We've got less investment in good journalism and professionalism and so on, less money spent on training. As a result, standards have been falling. All over the world we see standards in journalism falling. So I think the question of what is happening to the ethics of journalism is actually a perfectly valid and important question. Any student will know what ethical journalism is, but the real point about it is how you put it into practice. It's very good to know it on paper, but how do you put it into practice? And that's actually very difficult. And here in Hungary, the debate all through today has actually sort of revealed that there's a major problem. And it came up, I think, clearly in the last session. And the major problem is how do we develop a strategic plan for the future, about the future of journalism, in which we can have a proper debate in Hungary involving the public, involving media owners, involving journalists, involving policymakers, which can sort of try to deal with these questions in a rational way. And we need to have that discussion, we need to have that debate. But first of all, we need to have it in the context of recognizing some fundamental truths. First of all, there is free expression in Hungary. Hungary is not a banana republic in Europe. There is perfectly clear evidence of free expression, bloggers, people in the press and so on. But secondly, there are major problems in the way that the sort of media regulation is taking place. In the last 2 years, we've actually had a major diversion caused by the government itself. The government's media law and the government's media council created an enormous diversion in which people became really concerned about the government trying to control the press and so on. And so we've had international missions, we've had the European Union involved, we've had the Constitutional Court has been involved, the laws have had to be amended and so on and so forth. And that's been an enormous diversion, and it's prevented an engagement in a strategic debate and discussion about the future. I mean, I think we need to move on from that. I think we need to recognise that media law was a mistake, that the Media Council and so on, and that debate, we need to put that to one side. We need to focus on what's the future. How do we have a serious debate and discussion about ethics, high standards, improving the situation for media in Hungary so that journalism has a future. And I think the door is open. I think there's a lot to be done. Of course, Hungary is a small country. And here, you know, the world of politics and the world of media is very closely related. And we heard today that there are real problems about knowing what media is independent and what media is politically controlled. I mean, and that's a real difficulty. But I don't think there's any doubt that there's a need for a discussion. There's a need for a new debate and a need for a fresh start. So we need to stop thinking about Hungary as a major problem case because of this media law and so on and so forth, and move the debate forward. And
the direction in which the paper is going. So internal self-regulation, literally self-regulation within your own particular newsroom, is something that journalists themselves can actually draw up. Now we have, in my own office, we adhere to a code of conduct which is a national code of conduct produced by editors, called it the Editor's Code. But in addition to that, we also have a slightly more detailed one about our own conduct within the newspaper itself when it comes to things like outside associations as a journalist. Should you be affiliated in any way to a political party? Should you perhaps be working for another organisation? That sort of thing. Those conflicts of interest that we all of us have in the job, and some newspaper offices like to think very carefully about that and the way that their journalists present themselves to the rest of the world and others don't. I think it's probably quite a good idea to think about your relationship with the rest of the world as a journalist, whether you are the story or the story is actually the story itself. So you asked me how I'd start, that's how I would start.